Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
Your co-host Rich Gear with you as well. And, well, Doug, who do we have here as a guest?
Well, this is Dr. Jean-Guy Daigneault, right? Did I get that correct?
Pretty close, yeah.
And he is our imported from Montreal. He's the fellow that I've been going to as a chiropractor for quite a bit, and he's now taken on a new task of being the director at Gilead Healing Center, sponsored by Mount Hope Church, and so we want to welcome you here.
Yeah.
Today's we're going to interview him concerning the idea: does eating fat make you fat? And I would like to talk a little bit about this because not only that he's a chiropractor, but he's a nutritional expert. Now, tell us a little bit about your expertise in this area and how you would describe yourself as a nutrition expert versus maybe a medical doctor. What is the difference between you and a medical doctor?
Well, first is, I think if you want to understand a little bit about where I'm coming from is I grew up on a farm right on the South Shore of Montreal. And my parents had a farm. It was about 200 acres of farmland. We grew vegetables. And that's how as a young man, right, I worked on the farm the first probably 18 years of my life. Mm-hmm. So I've had an interest in that, obviously, because of my parents. And then after that, I went to school to study to become a physical education teacher. Mm-hmm. So I've always had an interest into health and wellness. After that, I got a degree in nutrition. And then after that, I became a chiropractor. And so that's how the journey went, from me starting on the farm and having an interest for that. And then having the expertise in nutrition, and then as well as being a chiropractor. So if you were to compare the difference between a medical doctor versus a chiropractor, right? I'm not sure if that's the question you're asking, but let's say that you are asking the question.
All right.
Sound like it to me.
That's right.
Yeah.
So what happened is in chiropractic and in the medical profession, we basically study the exact same thing up to the point where in the medical profession we're going to start studying pathology and pharmacology, and in the chiropractic profession then we're going to be studying more of some neuroanatomy and neurophysiology and learning about the nervous system and the spine and as it relates to every function in the body.
Right.
So that's a little bit where the split will happen, and then after that we'll have a hands-on, which obviously is heavy into our schooling to learning about the neuromuscular system and how to handle that with your hands.
Yeah, hands-on learning, right?
That's right.
Very good.
Chiropractors don't quite do as much like back cracking as they used to do. It seems like they do more focused type things where what they do with things. They use some of my little machines, and I've been taking Carol to a chiropractor who's got a specialty with what is that name of that machine?
It was an Atlas orthogonal instrument.
Yeah. That is correct, yes. Yeah. So in the world of chiropractic, there's obviously several techniques that you can be using to adjust the spine. And just like you said today, obviously now we're 120 some years into chiropractic, so there's a lot of things that have been, that have through the evolution of time, right, that now chiropractors will be using to adjust the spine. But there's still, it just depends on what the needs are, obviously, from one person to another. At our office, if you were to adjust a baby, the force you'd be using for adjusting a baby would be different than the force you'd be adjusted if I were to adjust you, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the reason why there's many things that can be done. There's those tables that you can be adjusting. They're called drop table. You can be adjusting by hands.
I'm familiar with those.
Yeah. And then the instrument, just like you mentioned, that obviously that there's different group throughout the country that their background is in mechanical engineering that have developed those instruments to adjust the spine.
Well, because they're trying to, with my wife, they're trying to get the cerebral fluid to start flowing properly because it wasn't flowing. When she was under anesthesia, her neck got twisted in a way the atlas got bent and it constricted it all to such extent the fluid was not flowing in her. Everything swelled up like the ventricle swelled up 4 times bigger than normal, and that machine. They're trying to get it so we don't have to surgically go in there to drain it or put a shunt in there. That's the first thing. But anyway, just because chiropractic is a big part of what I'm doing with Carol. Another thing we found out is the 3rd and 4th or 5th one where the vertebral arteries come out got pinched. One of them got pinched, and the blood flow was shut off for 12 years.
That's right.
So we're trying to see about getting that, see if I can get some blood flow back there. We don't know what we can get back, but you know, it's kind of it's a brand new window here of opportunity after all this time. So anyway, his sister, my wife, so you know, that was we're big proponents of that. When I was a kid, I have to tell you, I didn't grow up thinking, you know, chiropractics is what we called it, chiropractics, because we didn't. I never grew up with that, and until I ran into his family, they did chiropractics for forever, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And I remember going in one time and, well, all right, I'll try it out. And I used to I had horse throats for years, and suddenly they did something, and I didn't have a problem. I was a singer, so I was having issues with that, and I've never really had a horse throat since then.
Well, that's very interesting that you bring this up, because my mother brought my sister to the chiropractor over 50 years ago. And when she took my sister to the chiropractor, it was because my sister had asthma.
Okay.
So just to think about this for a minute here, 50 years ago, bringing somebody to the chiropractor, a baby that has asthma, that was like unheard of, right? But as a result of chiropractic adjustment, my sister was able to breathe better, right? And through the course of 120 some years since chiropractic has been around, obviously you hear stories like this all the time, that, you know, people's back pain might have gone away, but other things will start happening, right?
Yeah.
And people will breathe better, people will have their digestive system will function better, people will start sleeping better. And, you know, we hear that all the time. And, you know, the fun part is, especially with kids, you see kids that you start giving them a chiropractic adjustment, their nervous system start working better, and then as a result of that, those little bodies, they start healing and get better, and you have kids that can't sleep at night, they have ear infection, and it just goes away.
And I've also noticed that the medical profession is much more amenable to chiropractors than they used to be. I know I'm familiar with the Chiropractic Association won a lawsuit back in the 70s or 80s or something, and that changed everything. But doctors today are much more, they work back and forth a lot more than they used to, a lot more.
Absolutely.
So anyway, that was just, to me, interesting things to see that happen, because you guys specialize in areas that they really don't. I mean, we're going out to a guy who invented the MRI.
That's right.
And we've talked about him on our show, Dr. Raymond Demadian. He talked to it in front of a chiropractic association. He goes, wow, there's 5,000 people or whatever. He said 4,500 people. Must be doing something right. And so he started, and he works with a guy named Dr. Rosa out in New York, and that's where I'm taking Carol to do some of this stuff. So interesting things what they've learned and what they keep progressing in. But you also do nutrition as well as, and that seems to be kind of part of the chiropractic thing, a little bit more open to that kind of stuff. Doctors are getting some of that, but they're still far away, not into it as much.
You know, I think the reason for that is because my expertise is in health and wellness, right? And I believe that the nervous system is obviously the master controller system in the body, but you know, not only you want the nervous system to function better, but you also want to have the raw material into the body so the body can heal the way God has intended to. And so for me, this is like a perfect match, you know, to bring into, you know, this picture of health and wellness. Because when I go to the seminars, and you guys at some point were there, you know, you hear me saying, you know, you have to think well, move well, eat well. And if you don't do all those things, well, the ability for you to be the best that you can be, you know, you might not be able to reach that.
Yeah, in the past, the medical profession has been, you know, has some misconceptions about a number of things. So where, you know, they were taught evolution in their classrooms, and they were taught that, a lot of the different things, and you have junk DNA, you have all these different things.
Vestigial organs.
Vestigial organs. They would, you know, routinely remove things. They're into the
Spare parts.
Spare parts.
Yeah.
Spare parts.
Yeah.
And so they would, you know, have heart transplants and things of that sort. And hopefully, I will never need to do that because I go to you.
We want to keep you healthy. Well, you know, you just got to understand that, you know, what is the purpose when we go to see a physician? What is the purpose? The purpose is to find a diagnosis of the condition that you have and how we're going to treat that. And in the world of medicine, right, in the world of the system, is when you open up the toolbox, the majority of the time is we either going to have a prescription or we're going to have some kind of procedure that, you know, would be called a surgery.
Right.
And we have to be clear and understand what is being done. I tell people all the time, I say, you know, if you have a house that is burning and is on fire and you run into the house and the alarm system is on, would you agree that the alarm system tells you there's something much worse happening? And of course everybody's going to say yes. I'm like, well, what about if you take the batteries out of the fire alarm? Is the house still burning? Well, of course, but there's no noise. Well, now we're going to translate the same idea to what we do in medicine. We have high blood pressure. You go to the doctor, you open up a toolbox, gives you a blood pressure pill. The blood pressure is lower, the numbers look good, but is the problem still there?
That's right, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have to understand what is being done. It's not because the blood pressure looks good, the number looks good, that the person is healthy.
Right.
And that is my point to people. I always tell people all the time, I'm like, listen, you're taking a blood pressure pill right now, your blood pressure looks good, it doesn't mean you're healthy. There's a difference between having good numbers and a person being healthy. And that's
right.
really important for people to understand that.
Yeah, if you have cancer and you cut out the cancer, you haven't cured the original problem. It may come back because you haven't corrected the condition.
The underlying cause,
Yeah,
yes.
they're talking about like with cancer, like if your body's too acidic or something like that, it's more prone for a cancerous. Is that true? I mean, I don't know. I've read that a few places.
Well,
There's all these theories out, you know.
Yes. I mean, what we need to look at is you got to create, your body has to be into an environment that, you know, will be in an environment for healing. When a person, Doug has heard this from me before, when people eat cake, cookies, candies, ice cream, bread, rice, and pasta constantly, day in and day out, which is basically, they use the term now, the SAD diet, which is the standard American diet. Maybe you've heard of that.
No.
Right? The standard American diet is to eat, you know, lots of carbs, people eat lots of grain, people eat a lot of dairy, people eat a lot of, nobody wants to eat fat, of course, because fat is bad, right? No fat, no sugar, right? But yet people are fatter than they've ever been before.
Yeah.
And we're sicker than we've ever been before. So think about this for a minute, right? The past 50 years we've been eating less fat than ever before, but yet we've been fatter than we've ever been. There's over 75% of the country right now that is overweight and over 35% of the country that is obese. So how can you eat less fat but yet you're fatter? So obviously what we thought we were doing right, we're not. Right?
That's right.
So when people are eating sugar all day long, sugar turns into fat. How do we know that? There's a lady, her name is Mary Enig, E-N-I-G. She wrote a book, it's called Know Your Fat. In her book, she goes over about all of the chemistry of how sugar turns into fat. And it happens every time. Your body can only store so much sugar. After that, it turns into fat.
Okay, all right.
So if you understand that, then when people come to the office and they're like, I want to lose weight, then I tell them, Doug, I want you to eat more fat. Then you're going to lose weight. People look at me, they're like, are you crazy? I'm like, no.
So what kind of fat do you eat? I don't really, what do you mean by eating more fat? How does that work? I don't really understand that.
That is a good point, right? So let's talk about this for a moment. If you were to go to the health food store right now and you're asking them for a pill to lose weight, they're going to put you in the aisle on the top shelf. You're going to see coconut oil pill, and you're going to see some other kind of pills that have fat in it. And people are like, well, how can that be? Because once you start eating fat, if your body's using fat for fuel instead of using sugar for fuel, guess what happened? You become more efficient at burning fat.
You become less hungry.
So you're going to be less hungry, yes. And then on top of that, you're going to see your weight just coming down. It happens every time. And people are like, well, what kind of fat? All kinds, right? Nuts and seed, good fat. Avocados, good fat. If you eat some meat, right? Not all the meat are equal, obviously. But in meat, there's good fat in there? The answer is yes. It depends what the animal's been eating. So if the cow is being cut loose into the pasture, and you give him a choice, well, you're going to eat the grass, or you're going to eat soy, corn, or any of those, which one do you think he's going to pick? Naturally. Going to pick the grass. But in this country, what do we do with the cows? We feed them with what?
Corn.
Corn and soy, right? So when you feed the cow with corn and soy, those are omega-6 fatty acid, and what they do is they cause inflammation in the body. It's like putting gas in the fire. So the kind of fat that you eat from those animals, if you were to eat hamburger meat, that would not be Dr. Jean-Guy approved.
Okay.
But if the cow's been eating his entire life, been eating grass, right, then now it's a total different picture. Do we have a lot of that in this country? We don't, and most people don't understand that. Even in the medical literature, when you read the literature, it says, and the medical doctor will tell you that, will say, don't eat any red meat because that's bad for you. And that's true. It is bad if the cow's been eating corn and soy his entire life. But if the cow's been eating grass, grazing on grass his entire life, that's completely different.
Usually, the cows around here, they're always eating grass. I never see them eating the other stuff, but I don't know that's whether they're the ones I'm getting in the store or not, which is probably not. I don't know.
It's probably unlikely, and there's a lot of misconception. You go to the store, and then now there's a big rave about grass-fed beef.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But there's also organic grass-fed beef. So what's the difference? Right? Most people don't know that. And we should probably, if those guys are listening to this right now, most people don't know that. Grass-fed beef, you could have the cow that is eating grass, but you can still spray all of the grass for the weeds, right? With Roundup or, some other chemicals. But if you have organic grass-fed beef, now the grass has never been sprayed. So that's different. There's also another word that they use a lot. We were just talking about this tonight, about the word natural. Natural means nothing, right? It just means that we got you. That's what it means, because most people, they go to the store, they're like, everything I buy, it's natural. And I tell people, I'm like, you need to know better, right? The consumer needs to know.
So you have crap, and you have crap that's more expensive.
Yes, Doug heard this from me before, and he thought it was really funny. I tell people all the time, like, listen, when you go to the health food store, right? People think that they're just like, everything is good. I'm like, listen, you're just buying crap that is just more expensive. It doesn't mean because you go to a health food store that it's all good, because it's not, truly.
Yeah, and that's the real problem. If that's ubiquitous, if it's all over, then most people aren't going to spend the time to try to find this special place where they can buy grass-fed beef. It's not, if it's.
That's a good point that you have, but I don't agree with what you just said.
I'm just saying that the average guy. I mean, I don't have time to dig around. I don't even like cooking, quite frankly.
I understand. But you do have time, to just think simple. And I tell people, what does that mean, simple? When people say, well, what should I eat? If you go back 100 years, 200 years ago, people were eating fruits, vegetables, protein, and fat. That's what they were eating. What should you eat?
But they were still dying at 42, so I don't know, how does that...
That is not true. That is not true.
The ones that live long, but
those people back in those days, if you study the literature and you go back, right, you see that those people, they weren't dying from heart disease, they weren't dying from cancer. The only reason why we live longer today is because we have organ transplant, and people take a lot of drugs. So do people truly have quality of life today? In my opinion, they don't. I see people every day in my office. The average American will take anywhere, by the time they get to 60 years old, anywhere between 3 to 5 different prescription medication. And it's not unusual that people come in, they're like, Dr. John, I didn't have enough room to write it down. Here's the piece of paper, and it's 8.5 by 11, and it's full. This happens every day. Right? So I want you to think of this, because this is a very important point that you just said. You're like, hey, people in those days, where do people truly live longer? People live longer today because we can replace organs and because we can give them drugs, but do we really have quality?
Well, I don't know, it depends on who you are, I suppose, but what I'm getting at is it's also that 90% of people live on farms, and they don't today. That's just a whole different world, and how do you get people to do those kinds of things without having to just, like you're in a jail cell with all this regulation and all this stuff? People just aren't going to live that way. I mean, it's got to be realistic in that sense to me, that it's something that's approachable, realistic. These Weight Watchers thing, we got to plan all your meals. I'm not going to do that. Never going to happen,
You don't have to do that.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah, and that stuff drives me crazy.
Here's the rule. You know the rule? Fruits and vegetables, protein and fat. That's the rule.
Yeah. Okay.
That should not drive you crazy.
If it has a label with a lot of fancy ingredients on it, then it's probably not good for you.
If there's a label on it, it's not for you.
Okay.
That's simple.
Yeah.
Now there was something that came up about 1980, which was the food pyramid, and you had a head up the top, and I've got it here. It's the.
Can't really see it very well in that printout, but
I'll put it in. The food and drinks high in fat, sugar, and salt is up at the top, which is you should have very, very sparingly, according to this.
Yeah.
And then you would have fat, spreads, and oils up at the top, very, very sparingly. Then meat, poultry, fish, and eggs, and beans and nuts, the third tier. Then you have milk, yogurt, and cheese, the fourth tier.
Which each one is progressively more.
Yeah, progressively more, and then whole meal cereals, breads, potatoes, pasta, and rice, which is on your bad list. and then vegetable, salad, and fruit, what do you think of this? Do you think this is, should be improved a little bit?
Not much, you know. Have you made your own pyramid yet?
Just think here for a moment that everything that our government is putting money into, right, this is what we are promoting. Mm-hmm. Everything that we are investing into, right, the dairy company, all the wheat, corn, and soy, this is what we want people to eat. But yet, just remember, chronic illnesses is at its highest that it's ever been before. Just think about this for a moment. If we were doing the right thing for our people, would we be in the position that we're in now?
Right.
Again, you go back 100, 200 years ago, people didn't get up in the morning and say, okay, I need to have breakfast now, I'm going to have cereal, I'm going to have a piece of toast and a glass of orange juice. That didn't happen. Mm-hmm. It just did not happen. But yet today, that's what people want to do. That's the breakfast of champion. They have cereal, they have toast, and they have a glass of orange juice. And they think that they're going to be able to be healthy without taking drugs. It's just not going to happen.
Well, that was Kellogg, man. Seventh-day Adventist guy back. He was the one who got us all with the. He was had sanitariums and promoted the cereal. He's trying to get people away from ham and eggs, because that's what people were eating back in those days: ham and eggs. You know.
Here we go.
Farm.
Protein and fat.
Yeah. And usually that's good, and he thought it was bad, so he changed the way everybody ate. You know, everybody really he did back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. That was his regimen to get people on the grains.
One of the best books that anyone could ever read is this book by Gary Taubes, Taubes. This man wrote many, many books, and he reviews the literature for the past 100 years. One of his books is called Good Carbs, Bad Carbs. If a person truly wants to learn about food, that's the book that they need to read. Half the book, there's like 600 pages, 300 of them are references. And it's truly interesting to see and understand where we're coming from, and then at the same time what's been happening with chronic illnesses. I mean, it's pretty simple. We have more chronic illnesses than ever before. People
when was that book written? Sorry.
Gary Taubes.
Gary Taubes, when was it written?
Taubes. All in the past 10 years, he's got like 10 of them.
Oh, he's written 10 books?
Several of them. One of them is Good Carbs, Bad Carbs.
Okay.
600 pages, half of it is just references. He's got other ones on sugar too, which is excellent. But I would highly encourage that, to be able to learn and understand where we're coming from, right? And all those decisions were made and where we're at today, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer to just look around and see how can we have so many people dying from, the current medical, system that we're in, people that are dying because of reaction drugs that they're taking and having the top killer like cancer and heart disease. How can that be?
Yeah, you have all those drugs advertised on TV, and half of the commercials filled up with side effects. Do you really want to sign up for that?
Yes.
Yeah.
One more thing that I just want to touch on is oftentimes people are like, well, Dr. John, I just have bad gene. And that's really important to touch on that because there's a new science now, it's called epigenetics. Those people, here we go. So those people in epigenetics, they're going to tell you, every one of them, that 95% of the disease we have today, has nothing to do with your bad gene. It has to do with the lifestyle that you live and the environment that you're in. So what that means is, the other day, this lady, she said to me, she's like, well, Dr. Jean-Guy, are you telling me that my grandmother had heart disease, my mother had heart disease, but I don't have to have heart disease? I'm like, yes, that's exactly what I'm telling you. Because you have something to say. Bad gene is just like a bad, it's like a library of books. You decide which one you're going to be picking off the shelf based on your lifestyle.
There's a fat switch that gets turned on. I wanted to ask you about trans fatty acids. How are those manufactured? And I know that the opposite of that is, I think, is cis or something like that. That's what the body uses.
How do you know that, Doug? This is impressive. Yes, chemically they change them.
Yeah.
So they take a fat that is good for you, and then we change its chemical composition.
Well, it's easier to make.
Yes.
The trans fatty fat.
And then we make everybody believe that margarine is better for you. But what happens is those trans fat, what they do in the body, is they will just make every single cell structure of your body more stiff. So therefore your body is, if your cells, there's 100 trillion cells in your body, and if they're more stiff, guess what? Your body can't function properly.
Well, my brother's going to love you to say it here. He says, we were raised on margarine because it was cheaper, but now I like butter. And he always uses butter rather doesn't use margarine at all. But
I tell people
but
it should be dripping all over your face.
Oh yeah, yeah. But he still says I need to drop about 30, 40 pounds, maybe 50. You know, so.
Yeah.
But,
So, what would be the best sources for good fat in our diet? You mentioned avocados and coconut oil and things of that sort.
Yeah, so you have those oil that haven't been refined, like coconut oil. Those are, a good oil that is a medium chain fatty acid that gets right into the cells to give you energy. You have other kind of oil that are monounsaturated oil, like olive oil. You also have things like nuts and seeds. Nuts and seeds have this kind of fat that's called polyunsaturated fat. You also have other kind of fat that most of you have heard of. They're called fish oil. Right? Fish oil is an omega-3 fatty acid. They're natural anti-inflammatory.
Yeah, take those, yeah.
They're good for your brain. They're good for your heart. They're good for your eyes. Right? They're good for your musculoskeletal system. And then obviously a lot of people will eat avocados. Those are great as well.
So what are the side effects of not having enough good fat in your diet?
I'm glad you asked. Right?
That's not like a setup, folks, or what? You know.
I'll tell you this. When you don't have enough good fat, here's what happens. Physiologically, when you have good fat, you can't function properly. Right? Your cognition goes down if you don't have enough fat. If you don't have enough fat, you cannot make hormones. Hormones like testosterone. Is that important to you guys? Of course it is. Right? Things like progesterone, estrogen, DHEA, those are all hormones that your body uses fat to make those hormones. And if you don't have enough of that, you can't make it. So that's really important.
So I really think that it's important to study what would be a good reference for us to look at to actually understand how fat works in the body.
I love this book that is simple to read. It's the book by Mary Enoch. Mary Enoch passed away a few years back, but her book is just outstanding. It's called Know Your Fat. Every single person could have that at home. And it's an excellent book. You can just find that right on Amazon.
Okay.
Know Your Fat by Mary Enoch, E-N-I-G. She's a PhD in nutrition. Great book.
And Dr. John Gee does nutrition evaluation and he's part of Gilead Healing Center here in Lansing, Michigan. And I would encourage you to see him if you have any questions. And we hope you enjoyed our time with Dr. John Gee, Daigneault, and we'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.